Y'all know what it is.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs. Today's special guest is You Got It, me and Mike. What's up, Mikey?
Yeah, same old. How are things?
You know, living the dream. It's been a hectic couple weeks. So 2 weeks ago, I think, and we may have done a show since then, but I did a quick spring break trip down to Tucson with the kids and spent a little bit of time in Phoenix. And I know you're a Phoenix guy. So I think we talked about that a little bit pre or post, but immediately after getting back, we took off and went on our annual mini Mo tour.
That's right.
Yeah. So for people who have paid any kind of attention to this show in the last little while, or, you know, I guess really, I started following her in 2013. So really anybody that's followed us for almost the tenure of this show may have noticed or may have heard me talk about Mo. She's a Danish pop star, Danish singer that I like. And she was playing through the States for the first time since COVID. And so we went out to see her in New York and in Boston. And it was like 2 weeks after spring break. So it had just been, you know, a ton of travel. So, but anyway, so it was a lot of fun, like it always is. And, you know, I will continue to go to these tours every year, hopefully more than once a year. In fact, there's a bunch of European dates right now that I'm eyeballing. I just don't have any money. So this is the problem. But anyway, no, it just, I kind of wanted to just talk about it a little bit because there's, you know, first of all, maybe and most importantly, I finally got to meet her.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for me, right? Not anybody really cares, but for me, that was cool. And we also met, it was pretty funny. So we met some people in the show who I guess had met her before or something, knew her. And so we kind of palled up with them and we're like, hey, we want to try and meet her. I have these 2 records that are from her like prior band or prior life, really. Like it's a kind of music she doesn't even play anymore, but from back in the olden days when she was young and, or younger. She's young compared to me, but younger. And but I've been lugging these records around for a couple of years. They were like my prized possession. Like they were so hard to track down and I finally got them and they're kind of expensive. And so anyway, I lugged them out on this tour because I was committed. I was like, this is the trip. We're going to meet her this time. We got it. And so I took these records out there and, you know, I mean, anybody that's been in a concert before, like, I mean, I'm not dying to take these into the show with me. Right. And especially these are general admission shows. I'm not sitting back in a seat somewhere. And, you know, the last thing I want is for them to be destroyed. And so I try to connect with her on social media and everything in New York and, you know, never doesn't work. She doesn't respond to DMs, that kind of thing.
But she liked your comment though.
Yeah. This is what was so frustrating is that she knew that I was having a problem, right? Because I was trying to get this thing solved and she liked it. Now, maybe she didn't read the post. Maybe she just clicked like, you know, out of habit. I don't know. But, you know, or maybe she has somebody helping her with her network or her account or something. I don't know. But yeah, I was frustrated because she was like, ooh, I like that you're looking for somebody named Mo to come sign these records. But then she wasn't responding to DMs on the backside. And so anyway, so it was a little bit frustrating. So in New York, which was probably the better of the 2 concerts, she, you know, we never heard back from her. We never connected with her. Unfortunately, the weather was really bad. Her bus was right out front of the venue. So, I mean, we probably could have just waited long enough and caught her.
Yeah.
But it was like torrential rain. And so, you know, so I didn't want to ruin the records or anything. So we gave up hope and went back to the hotel. So then the next night in Boston, you know, this is where we met these couple kids in the stands in the crowd and sort of buddied up with them. And we all decided after the show, we'd, you know, get together and we go hang out by the bus, which we had spotted sort of back in the alley behind the venue. And so these guys, Gannon and Angel were their names. And then also I was out there with my niece, Alora. And so the 3 of us, you know, we're just went around back and we're hanging around next to the bus. And, you know, I DM her a couple more times, say, hey, we're there. And I mean, I was in the very front row, both nights, both shows, and dangling those records in front of the barricades, you know, so if you're in front of the stage, basically, you know, she could see that I was hanging these records down. So she knew who I was and had put sort of a face to who was trying to reach her. And so we're waiting by the bus and we're all underprepared. Like it's cold and we're all standing by the bus in our t-shirts because we didn't want to wear hoodies into the venue and all that stuff. So we're freezing outside. And finally we're like, well, shoot, I don't know what to do. I mean, you know, how much longer do you guys want to wait? Whatever. So I get in my phone and she'd finally responded to the DM, which was kind of hilarious. But she's like, oh my God, you know, I'll come out by the bus and sign it in 20 minutes. Well, in just standing around and being frustrated outside, it was like, I mean, it had been like an hour since she sent that. So now I've blown it, right? She's texted and we weren't around or whatever. So I responded to her. I was like, yes, we're still out by the bus. We're freezing. And, about 15, 20 minutes later, she came out and met us all in the alley. And so it was pretty cool. It was a fun experience for me, fun experience for my niece, Alora, who was also a fan. And she had wanted to go to prior Mini Mo tours and was unable to. So this was her first, and she was very excited to get to meet the singer and all that. So anyway, so it was pretty fun. So we did that, and I'm going to mess this story up a little bit because I'm so bad with names and everything. But while we were in the alley, we met a couple guys from Canada, these French Canadian dudes, and I want to say it's Thomas and Jerome. And so, but Jerome is apparently like a folk musician from Quebec. Okay. And he's apparently very popular. He's got like 2.5 million downloads on Spotify, and he's got a couple of songs. He's pretty fun. So I might put a link to him in the comments of the show so people can go check him out. But anyway, he's a big Mo fan too. So we hung out and listened to him in English, which is probably his second or third language, cracking, trying to make puns in English. And
so he speaks French.
Yeah, French. I guess
from
French
Quebec, probably.
Yeah, it's from Quebec. And so, but really thick French accent, and spoke, French primarily. And so anyway, so we were talking in English, but it was entertaining at least. And so anyway, we had a great time with those dudes and with the other guys that we'd met out there. Got our record signed, got some pictures. So that was all a dub. And the Boston show was kind of a weird one because, for people who don't know her music, so she's most famous here in the States for a song called Lean On, which is actually a Major Lazer song, but she's the singer in it. And so that's probably the song she's most known for here in the States. And she, obviously writes her own music and performs a lot of her own music and stuff, but it's, it's like pop, electric pop, kind of indie pop kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so it's kind of, it's a different kind of crowd than you might expect to see me standing in. And so, typically speaking, although I will say there was a much broader range of older people at this show than I had expected in the past. But there was like this crew of like full on Boston, wicked Boston frat boys hanging out in the crowd with like
Goodwill Hunting status.
Exactly. So probably, there with girlfriends or whatever. And God, they were just so drunk and belligerent and going full Boston on everybody. And, I don't know how else to put it, but like Mo's music draws a very diverse crowd, sort of, in respect to gender and age and all kinds of stuff, right? Like she draws a lot of LGBT type people and all this stuff. So it's, not a crowd of burly fighters, you know what I mean? And so these frat boys are totally out of place and totally just, shit faced. And they are just like bumping into everybody and pushing everybody around. Right. And so we're surrounded by all these like poor people who are just like trying to enjoy their show, but we've got these frat kids going nuts. And so it kind of took away from the experience. In fact, it was bad enough at one point. She actually stopped the concert and was like addressing them. Like, what are we doing? Like, and eventually they threw a couple of them out and, cleaned up the scene a little bit. So the back half of the show was good. But I will say the New York show was absolutely fire. So it was really amazing. We had a great time. The opening act was a band called Teza Talks or Teza Talks. I think it's Teza. Yeah. And she's from Seattle, so you might know them or have, come across them at some point. But they were really good too. They're, maybe a little bit more political music than I'm looking for, but they really talented. The woman that sings, Teza, she's got just like wild pipes. Like she's, so good. And so anyway, so she was really good. And I had an opportunity to hang out with the guitar player after the show. And actually I met the whole band, but, spent some time talking to him. Also for older listeners of the show, they know Mike and I have had some time in the music business. And, so we have thoughts on things, right? As it pertains to production and things like this, right? So we go around and we tell people what we know, what we think. And, but these guys are younger, this was their first tour. And obviously they're good musicians and all this kind of stuff, but I had some technical notes and they had seen me in New York, again, cause I was right up front. And so when they saw me in Boston, we got to talking and stuff. And so we had a good conversation about that. And actually I'm going to connect with their drummer, Dane out in LA next time we're out there. And so that'll be a lot of fun, but yeah, they perform in, or they're from Seattle area. So you have to keep your eye out for him.
Yeah, I noticed like they have a DJ kind of thing, but it's weird because he only has a mixer, which is a 2-channel DJS9, and I'm interested to see his workflow on what he's doing, because he doesn't have any turntables. He doesn't have
it's an interesting setup, because you've got two guys running electrical things, right? Running soundboards or whatever. I imagine one is doing a little bit, because one of them, let's see if I get this right. Again, I'll probably mess it up, but one of them that I was talking to afterward or after the show is like a battle rapper and DJ. And so I think he was the one doing more like, scratch effects and stuff like that. So I don't know if he's got a digital turntable up there or something, but then the other guy, I think, must be playing like music beds or something. I mean, I'm not totally sure. So, and then they have,
I know there's a way you can pipe like Ableton through it. And so I'm wondering if that was what he was doing, but it's weird to see a DJ mixer like an S9 or a 57 or whatever, 62, just sitting there by itself instead of having a couple decks next to it. So
yeah, I have a vague recollection of seeing him pick up a Serato disc at the end. And so I think there must be a table up there too, but I'll have to go back and look at the pictures. But I think he may have been doing a little bit of cutting and stuff like that. And then the other guy was playing the music. So I'm not entirely sure how their setup works, but it was interesting. So, but anyway, they were a lot of fun too, and cool people, and wish them the best of luck, of course. And then the show that we saw in Boston was the last show that we made it to, but they played DC the following night, and then that was it for the US tour. So, nice. But earlier in the tour, they had played with Imagine Dragons on 4 or 5 cities, and and then also solo shows in between out in California and stuff like that. So anyway, nice. It was a cool tour for them, and it sounded like they had a good time and everything. And so anyway, that's pretty much the Mo tour recap.
So did you drive around, or did you fly from Boston to New York?
Yeah, no, we flew into New York, and apparently, so part of my being able to take my niece out on this trip was that I could do buy one, get one ticket, because I had a comp ticket. And, but apparently when you do that, you can't do, I can't remember what she calls those, or what they called those kinds of flights where you break them up and you leave and come from different destinations. So like the grand plan was to fly into New York and come home from DC and actually go to all 3 of those shows. But the problem was, timing wise, we would have had to drive in from DC and leave from New York like the next day. And from what I could tell on Google Maps, it's 6 or 7 hours, like with good traffic.
So the trick is the train.
Yeah. And so, and I thought about that, but yeah, so we had rented a car, and we had a car for most places, which in both New York and, specifically in New York, but also in Boston, was just like atrocious to park and like hard to drive. And, so once we got to places, we just left it and walked everywhere anyway. We relied a lot on like public transportation and things in New York, and we didn't do a lot of moving around in Boston. We just walked over to the venue from our hotel. It was pretty near. So we went over there, and then the next day while we were in Boston, we drove up to Salem because my niece wanted to see Salem. So we went up there, and we ran into those same 2 people, this Gannon and Angel from the concert. And so we kind of palled around with them all day up in Salem. So it was a pretty good time.
That's crazy that they were there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty fun. So yeah. So we caught up with them for coffee, and then we just kind of roamed around the city for a while together. So it was pretty fun. We had a good time. Unfortunately, they were flying home the next day from Boston, I think, and they ended up missing a flight and a bunch of other stuff. So they had a bunch of drama getting home, but ours was a little less eventful. So
cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like a fun trip.
Yeah, it was good. So, and I look forward to doing more. I will say, again, in the spirit of, having some background in the music business and having toured with some bands and having thoughts for people, I immediately after the show tried to share some thoughts with Mo and her producer guy, and they didn't seem too interested. So we didn't get very far. But basically, I'll just say it out loud, because what they're missing out on in terms of making money is merch, a better merch line, and a VIP experience. Basically everybody there wants to see that, wants to meet Karen, the singer Mo, and it's kind of a missed opportunity. And it came up because there was something she said in Boston on stage that was like, when we were looking at this tour and trying to decide if it would be profitable and all this stuff, and I keyed in on the fact that she said profitable, because that made me wonder if, is there a chance this wasn't profitable? And if it's not profitable, is she going to stop coming to the States? And so I was like, well, shit, how can they make more money? And so immediately I went into overdrive, thinking of different ways that they could be making money, things that, opportunities that they're not taking advantage of yet. They do have a merch line, but like, I mean, I used to run merch for a lot of bands, and we moved, tens of thousands of dollars in gear, like every night. And, they had a crowd that was specifically tuned to buy a lot of buy a lot of shirts and things like that. But, the merch selection wasn't super compelling at this show. And I've been to other shows and it's sort of been the same. Mo herself or Karen is very artistic. And so a lot of this stuff is sort of derivative of her art and things like that. And I think it's good, but I think you just need a broader line to hit more people. And so I think there's some opportunity being missed there also. And I don't know if this is just how it is everywhere now, but at least in New York, the merch spot appeared to be being run by somebody at the venue.
Yeah.
I guess they're doing in some cities probably to keep people from not sharing a piece of their merch or merch sales. But
well,
that's
lots of times they do a split. So like when we did Jimmy World and Paramore, the whole arena got 15%, I think, of what the merch sales were.
And that's pretty common that most places will take a little piece of the merch or tickets or whatever, right? There's all these different deals. But by not having somebody that I guess, could be the interface between the band and the fan, which was really, I mean, kind of the specialty when I was doing it was I was a fan too. And for like some of the smaller bands, like the Mixed Mob guys and things, like I was a way or seen as a way to get in touch with the band. Right. So if you wanted to connect with the band, like connect with me and I might be your hookup. Right.
Yeah.
And I think so much about following a band like this, or really any band. I mean, really what you want is access, right? You want to meet the singers, you want to meet the band, right? Because music is a super emotional thing. And, so people build these connections in their head, right? With the singer that, oh, well, you touched my soul because of this lyric, or you said the thing that really appealed to me, or you're the one that made me get through this or that. And, and so because you have these really strong feelings, you have this connection. And if you go to those types of shows and you never, I guess, sort of facilitate that connection, you never have an opportunity, then it kind of can kill the experience a little bit, And so I think it's important. And I understand, people get busy and stuff like this, and maybe at some scale you can't really do a lot of that, but at their scale they could. And, and it would be, I think it would go a long way towards sort of ingratiating new fans and bringing new people in. And also sort of, firm up relationships with everybody else, right? I mean, you really do need the street advocacy, and you need the people out there pumping your band. And, I mean, this is a great way to do it, right? Give people access in the early days, and then let them, go evangelicalize. I don't know. Speak on your behalf.
Do you remember the Pennywise show we went to back in the day?
Yeah.
Where
I still have the skateboard on my wall.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was getting at is the merch guy for Pennywise took the decks back and had the entire band sign them for us. Whereas if you're doing that with, like a venue is running it, they're not going to do that for you. Right. You know what I mean? Granted, we did meet, I did an interview with one of the guys from Penny. Was it the bass player or the lead singer?
I think you had I think it was a guitar player.
Yeah.
So,
but anyways, we had a short interview with one of the guys because I worked for a radio station at the time, and that might have helped. But at the same time, like having the actual guy that tours with the band is what's going to do little hookups like that for you. So,
yeah. And that's it. I mean, like, I understand that, if you're trying to run a business of a band, like you can't, you can't give it all away. You got to keep a little bit, going. But like, a couple of years ago, I met the lead singer for Primus, and I had been a Primus fan my whole life. And finally they came through with a VIP experience, which I paid like, 4 or 5 times the ticket price to go be a part of. And I got back there and it was such a disappointment, right? I mean, the guy wasn't particularly friendly. He wasn't like anything. It was like, hey, you're lucky to see me. And like, in fact, when you did a picture, I mean, people naturally kind of get close and they put an arm around him or whatever, but he was like on his little X and he would like lean into you. And that was it. You weren't allowed to touch. You weren't allowed to talk. You couldn't ask a question. It was nothing. And it was like, okay, well, this is kind of stupid. Like you could just as well be anybody. What are we doing? And so for me, that actually sort of killed it. But if it had been the coolest experience ever and he had been amazing and had lived up to the hype, like, I mean, I'd still be singing the praises of Primus. Instead, my story is, oh, well, I finally got an opportunity to meet this guy who I named dogs after. And, after all that, like, it was kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Well, so like, okay. So as someone who has been on the other side, like dealing with drunk people and assholes and like, I'm not saying I'm Primus famous level status, but I've had to deal with that type of interaction. You can't take, like, he's doing that so many times. So like every show, he's got the same routine, the same, I got to meet 30 people, I got to do this. I think if it was more of a like, hey, my sister-in-law or whatever, let's kick it at, like if there's that kind of connection, there's something there. But like if he's going through 100 people every night before the show or after the show, the last thing on his mind is,
Yeah, but I think there's a little bit of responsibility just in that if you're going to charge somebody $500 to shake your hand, then you shake their hand.
Yeah,
like, that's the deal, and whether you like it, whether you're tired, whether you're famous, whether you're whatever, at the point that people are putting out money to hang out with you. And a big part of this, and actually we kind of got screwed over because we're in Utah, but a big part of it was promoting Les Claypool's vineyard. And so in all the other cities, everybody got to taste the wine, and he would talk about the wine and all that stuff. Well, in Utah, they couldn't. And so he has, I guess, also like a soda product, so he gave everybody soda instead, but you didn't get to talk about the wine or any of that stuff. They didn't discount it or anything, but ultimately it was still a sales pitch. And, so you did the sales pitch, and then the experience in meeting him was pretty whack. And so it was like, so if the point is that it's a VIP thing, right, and it's open to so many people, then, then I feel like you got to take care of people. To your point though, I mean, obviously, meeting all the drunk people after the show or whatever is probably suboptimal. But in the case of, especially like with Primus, I mean, their fans are in their 50s and 60s and stuff like that. I mean, older than me, most of them. And, I mean, these aren't a bunch of drunk asshole teenagers and stuff. These are executives and business owners,
I guess what I'm getting at is like, you could think that you're being, great and you're like nice and friendly and all that. And people can take it as a slight, and you don't even notice it as a artist or performer sometimes. And so, I mean, it's like, it's weird to like, I never thought of it as like, people are actually watching what I'm doing. People will pay attention to what I'm doing. So it's like, the fact that I could, maybe be a little bit condescending or something stupid, like just not even real, like sarcastic, and it could ruin someone's like opinion of me. I never actually put that together until a few years ago. It's just,
well, and like in the case of this, I mean, I will say that was my experience. I don't know if maybe nobody else felt that way, right? Maybe everybody else is like, maybe this guy just doesn't touch people, and he doesn't want to touch people.
The Howie Mandel's.
And which could be totally fine, but like in my head, it's crack a joke or something. Be like, hey man, sorry, I've got this thing. I don't like to touch people. Sorry. But make it known instead of coming off condescending. And so, but, so I don't know. And maybe other people's experiences were totally great, because I always have to sort of preface everything or sort of say out loud that I'm obviously a little bit jaded, right? Because just like you, I mean, I spent a lot of time on the other side, managing band, touring and all that kind of stuff, right? And so in my head, and I don't know if you feel this way sometimes, but I feel like kind of shitty that I have to buy a ticket and I have to wait in line and I have to stand out front with all the, people. And, like, I'm like, for 15 years or however long I've been doing it, it was like, my God, I used to I'd hang out, I had access, I could do my thing, it was like, I'm free to do whatever I want. And then when I had to start paying money to go to concerts again, it was like, oh, well, this kind of sucks. I don't know if I like this.
I hate it when I go into a venue and security doesn't know me or doesn't like, because I'm used to just walking through and doing my thing, and I have to be a normal person. What the hell?
So I will say, in Les Claypool's defense, or anybody else who has had what they think is a bad experience, or maybe their experience was better than I'm describing it. For me, a big part of it was probably that too. It's like, okay, well, but I'm that guy. I'm the guy that gets to go backstage, and I'm the guy that just, gives you a high five and it's cool and we move on. It's like, instead I'm actually one of these, sheep that, could actually afford to go on this VIP experience and all that, so it's kind of probably as much in my head as anything. So I give him the benefit of the doubt at least. But I will say too, like, so I took my oldest son to see his favorite group, which is this like collective of bands called Spider Gang. And they did a VIP experience, and basically, I mean, it was pretty poorly organized. Like, it could be fixed and it could be a much better experience. But for Ethan, like, I mean, I'm busy picking out all these things. I'm like, well, they should have had somebody here. They should have had a concierge moving people through. They should, all these things. But Ethan is like, oh my God, it was the coolest thing I've ever seen on in the planet. You know, I got to meet all these artists and everybody shook my hand and everybody was cool and everyone was so nice and all that stuff. And so, and now he's like, I mean, he's like Mr. Spider Gang, right? Like, I mean, he's buying everything they release. He's listening to every track they drop, you know, and I mean, he's full blast, right? But I think that VIP experience for him was that, right? I mean, he got in with those bands. They said his name out loud. They signed his poster. They did all that stuff. And like, he's going to be a lifer now, you know, like he's full blast. I mean, it's the same that I was probably when I first started with Cottonmouth Kings and stuff like that. Like, you know, the first time I met them, it's like, okay, cool. Now it's game on, baby. And, you know, for 10 years it was, you know, and I mean, I even saw them a couple of years ago or whatever. So, I mean, you know, we still run into those guys and, you know, the band members from other bands on that record label that I spent time with and got to know have become lifelong friends. You know, so, but it all began with a little bit of access. So that was sort of my point to the Mo crew was that, you know, a little bit of VIP access, you know, just a paid experience where 30 people get to come in and just, you know, she could say hi and sign their thing and move them on. You know, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be much more than just being pleasant to people, but like, and also, I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but I mean, I've been to dozens and dozens of her shows and most of the time, like all except for maybe this last trip when I finally met her, she pretty much just kind of bones out. Like she's gone. Like I've met the band a bunch of times. I've met, I mean, all kinds of other people at her shows. I mean, I met Diplo and Major Lazer and Charlie XCX and all these people at her shows, but I've never met her until this time, you know? And so it's kind of an interesting thing because she just, you know, is always in the limo and gone, always whatever. Like she's not doing the handshakes and the stuff out back. You know, she's just not doing that kind of thing. And, you know, I don't know if that's personality or schedule or whatever. I mean, you know, she's well within her rights to not do it. But it just seems like to me anyway, at least from a grassroots level, if you're trying to build a reputation in a foreign country, you know, that's something you could do that's relatively little skin off your nose. It doubles or triples your ticket prices. And, you know, so you can, you know, if the name of the game is profitability, then this is a way to make some money without, you know, too much extra work.
Yeah. I don't know. I have mixed feelings on it because last thing I want to do is go and do all that. So I relate with her, but at the same time, I get it.
You're antisocial, Mike.
I am. I really am.
Well, the problem too, I think for you, and I mean, obviously you can elaborate, but I mean, I think a big part of it for you is that, you know, a lot of your, you know, performing experiences in bars and everybody is drunk and shitty and wants something from you and, you know, the whole thing. Right. And I'm sure I have no doubt that if, you know, if Mo was hanging around out back behind every building, you know, there would be a handful of those kind of people. Right. So maybe that's part of it is I don't want to do that every time because I had a bad experience because some idiot came up to me and wanted something.
Well, I don't know. I mean, working in bars sucks, but at the same time, it's like, for me, I just don't like groups of people. And I think if I was like dealing with, you know, like a bunch of people passing through line, I'm signing something, I'm saying hello or whatever. It's more like platitudes and just like, sure, I'll do it. And I'd be fine with that as part of the gig. But like hanging out in a group of people that I don't know that are, it's just very awkward. It's like if I was, like the other day, I did this. I provided audio for kind of like a metal band here in Pocatello, and afterwards, I just packed up the speakers, loaded it in my car, and left. Everyone was hanging out with the band by the trailer and talking and all that stuff. That's just not my style. I just feel awkward. It's like we're not on that level, you know. It's like I'm not on that level with a lot of people. I mean, I'm barely on that level with you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I get it. Well, and I'm sure, you know, I mean, it's different strokes for everybody, right? So, I mean, this is obviously my 2 cents. And even, you know, like I told her producer guy, I was like, you know, this is unsolicited advice and it's totally without the context of your lives, right? Like, I mean, I don't know anything about what you think or what you want or how you feel. Like, I don't know any of that, right? I'm just saying, hey, you want to make a few more bucks, you know, here's a way you can do it. Yeah. But yeah, no, I get your point. I think you're probably not wrong.
So, yeah. Anyways, anything cool during the trip or other than the show, like good food?
Not really. I mean, it was fun doing some road tripping. You know, the food was pretty good. The biggest challenge was I was there with my 18-year-old niece, and my one rule, because I was covering hotels, car, and airfare, was that she had to buy her own food. And so that sort of restricted the types of restaurants I was picking.
You,
Um,
you
but
take her to the super expensive one.
I just, she's got a job and all that stuff, but like she can't go do, $150 meal or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and God, I mean, a burger in Manhattan is, $30. So it's like, I mean, it's not like we were like bargain shopping. So, but no, we went to a couple places. We went to a place, I think it was called the Smith or Smith. Yeah, Smith, maybe. It's there in Manhattan. It was really good. I don't know exactly what was going on with my niece. She had spaghetti every night. So she had their spaghetti and it was very good. I had a burger there that was awesome. And, that was a fun experience. And, it's Manhattan on a weekend at night, it's busy. There's people everywhere. It's pretty cool. I will say the only kind of negative experience, and it wasn't like anything happened, but our last night there, after we'd come back from Boston, we were staying at a hotel near Times Square. And so the last thing on Alora's list of things to do was eat at a real live New York food truck. Right. I don't know where she gets this list, but that's what she wanted to do. So we go out and, they're all over down there. And so, especially near Times Square. So we went down there and, we found a place to eat and all that. And while we were walking, we're just walking through Times Square. And like, I couldn't believe just the amounts, like just copious amounts of trash everywhere. I mean, it looked like somebody had like, I don't know, opened up the back end of a dump truck and then just like cruised through the neighborhood. It was like, I mean, it was just everywhere. And it was funny. The only part of New York I saw that, but it was pretty bad.
Last time I was in New York was I've only been there once, and then I was like 14. So this was pre 9/11. So a long time ago, but I had the same kind of thought. Was like, you're down in Battery Park and it's like just tires floating through in the water, and you're like, what the hell?
It's pretty rough, and some of it you just chalk up to big city problems. But this was like exorbitant, right? Because honestly, I thought, post COVID and everything, I figured that you were going to have your, like masked militias. I figured you were going to have homeless people gone wild. I figured it would be pretty rough, just because, I mean, the last time I was there was pre-COVID. And I didn't notice the homeless being particularly bad. And, we were kind of staying in the heart of Manhattan at the Ace Hotel. And we, walked several blocks around Broadway and all that kind of stuff to just, find food and that kind of thing. And I didn't notice it being particularly bad. I'm sure like any area, you've got good and bad spots and stuff, but I didn't see anything that made me go, wow, New York is really in the dumper. But yeah, when we came back, Times Square was bad. Like Times Square looked like, I mean, maybe they did, but I mean, it looked as if there wasn't like a big event or a concert the night before, or like, the cleanup after New Year's or something is what it looked like. There was just stuff everywhere. And I just couldn't believe it, because there are a lot of tourists and stuff walking around. I mean, it wasn't particularly late at night or anything. So there are a lot of people around, and, but God, just the trash was everywhere. So I don't know if they're not maintaining that area, or maybe they did have an event and just hadn't cleaned it up, or I don't know, but it was a disaster.
Yeah. It's always kind of a shame when you go to, like LA or Portland or, some places like that. And it's obvious that they're lacking and stuff like that. It's kind of
well, and I haven't been back to LA in maybe a year or something like that. And, and I mean, it was bad then, like I can only imagine now. So hopefully they're starting to, scrape things up a little bit and put stuff back together. But yeah, I don't know. So
that's why you go to Alaska instead of New York.
That's true. Well, I imagine they have marginally fewer homeless people on the streets in Alaska.
You just have to deal with the random moose or
some moose begging for food.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, that ended up taking a lot longer than I thought it might. So we probably have time to talk about one other topic, and I think it'd be fun to get kind of a little update on you and talk a little bit about your job hunt, how things are going.
Oh, it's going. I have a potential internship, which is pretty cool. I've been working with a company in Nashville, Vice Software. Just kind of, they're looking for someone to do more of a DevOps role. And for those of you that don't know what DevOps is, it's more of so you've got the guys that, write the software to begin with, like the React app and the API and all that fun stuff. But then there's the DevOps crew kind of does the deployment. And so like they manage, GitHub Actions and the CI/CD pipeline and the testing. So like say, for example, you've got a project with a bunch of tests lined up. Say you're doing like a Amazon, shopping cart kind of thing, but you have someone that's working on the front end and accidentally removes the checkout button. Well, you can actually write tests that verify that like the checkout button's there, and then it'll actually like do an example of like an actual transaction to make sure everything's functioning in the order. And so like the DevOps kind of maintains those tests and also does like the staging and deployment process. So like, say for example, you've got a new feature set that's coming out on a application that you're working on, you can actually deploy that feature set to a staging environment where you can actually send your server, like the server will send like 20% of your traffic to that staging environment, so that not your entire, the remaining 80% still works on the existing framework, but the new 20% of the traffic is actually kind of being your guinea pigs on the new release. And so that's all managed with like DevOps. And so the last week and a half, 2 weeks, I've been doing nothing but studying GitHub Actions and CI/CD pipelines and deployment, working with Nginx and those kind of things. And it's like a whole different world to me compared to what I like the boot camp I went through and everything. But essentially the way it is right now is like, if I can get the deployment process figured out and get it functioning, then I stand a chance of possibly getting this job, which would be cool.
Yeah. Well, and that sounds like an interesting line of work too. Does the stuff that you picked up in the boot camp, does that does it give you the knowledge you would need to know what you need to test for, basically, that kind of thing? Like, I mean, was there still some applicable skills that you picked up in the boot camp?
So like the testing, yes, but I mean, it's just basic. Like we were just, you can only cover so much in such a short amount of time. So like the tests that we would run were like, just, making sure that the input field was there, making sure that a button was there, making sure that, like just simple tests. But you can get really in depth with your tests and say like, I need to make sure that when, the item is put in the shopping cart and goes through the checkout process, that everything functions and flows. And that's a very in-depth test that we didn't really cover. We didn't really cover any type of deploying to, so like, I use Linode. So it's like you can spin up cloud servers and create your own kind of thing. And we didn't cover any of that. We didn't cover deploying to Amazon Web Services. We did deploy to, I can't remember what it's called. There's like a very easy deployment process that is based off of Amazon Web Server, but it's real straightforward. But if say, for example, I wrote an app and I deployed to that, I'm paying a lot of money just to have them maintain the server and maintain everything. Whereas if you kind of go through the back end and set up your own Nginx server and set up your own cloud and Linode, it's a lot cheaper. And so I wanted to learn how to do that on my own, just because I didn't want to pay a lot of money for hosting. And so the last project that we did in the boot camp, I ended up deploying to a Linode server just to get the experience. And I'm glad that I did that, because when I was kind of like meeting with this guy for this job, I was able to show him, like, hey, this is how you SSH into the server. This is, what I did for that and this and that, and could show him that I had experience with that. And it kind of, he's like, yeah, well, his exact, what he said was, he's like, you seem like you have the kind of drive that you'll just sit there and figure it out. You'll like, no matter what, you'll just sit there and figure it out. And we like people like that. So
yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, I think with a boot camp like what you did, I mean, certainly you can't learn everything, right? I mean, there's so much to learn, and it changes month to month and week to week. And so, I mean, certainly couldn't learn it all. I think it's, you pick up a good foundation, but I guess the assumption is that you'll learn most of that kind of stuff or, specific things on the job, right?
Well, so like, yes and no. DevOps, yeah, like if you kind of get an entry position in there, you're going to learn most of that on the job. But they expect that basic JavaScript. They expect that you're going to know how to use React and SQL and all these different.
It seems like you would have to just to be able to write tests or to even understand how to test or for whatever.
Yeah, and so like, I don't know. It's kind of. I think that there's a case to be said for specializing. Like I kind of, if DevOps wasn't on the table right now, I would be focusing on Python and Django, just because I like the language. I like Python, and Django seems like it's a really cool framework that's similar to React, but has, in my opinion, I like it better. And so just because of that, I would focus on that. But I don't know. I'm still very new to everything, and so everything I just said could be complete bullshit. But from the research that I've done in the last week and a half, the DevOps guys, it seems like a really cool, like, because it's like you're the gatekeeper. You're the guy that's like, you got to pass all the tests, you got to be able to do this, and if it's going to get deployed. So instead of just there just seems is a kind of a cool job title and a role. And then also it's something that if you get hired and you become a DevOps guy, your pay is actually 25% higher than a normal full stack developer.
Oh, wow.
So it's because you have to have, you have to have the front end and the knowledge to be able to write the tests and to be able to interact with the app. And then you also have to know the back end, which is more of like you got to know security, you got to know like pen testing and stuff like that. So it's a kind of like a hybrid between a developer and a security expert. And I'm kind of into both. And so I think it'd be kind of cool to actually do that role. So.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Have you just in shopping around for work and anything, like, I mean, have you been putting out applications, or do you have any sense for what the market's like for other developers that might be looking for work?
I know that 3 of the guys from my group have already gotten jobs. So that's cool.
Yeah.
One guy is specific in Python. The other guy is specific in backend. And I don't know what the other guy is doing, but I know that, there's a lot of work out there as I'm looking for work and applying for jobs. There's 20 to 30 new posts every day on LinkedIn as far as like entry level. Like I have filters set up on my LinkedIn for alerts for entry level developer jobs in Alaska and or remote, one of the two. So I'm thinking.
I have to imagine. I mean, I'm sure there are some in Alaska, but I imagine remote's going to be a more easy to find fit.
90% of them.
And then you can just be in Alaska if you want to.
Yeah. So I'm thinking if I have to be on site, Yeah,
you might as well pick where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, well, that's cool. Well, and I imagine, now with this recent sort of Twitter acquisition, I mean, not that anybody will actually do what they're saying, we're having one of those, if so-and-so becomes president, I'm moving to Canada moments where all the engineers are saying, hey, if Elon takes over, then I'm leaving. So there may be some vacancy at Twitter if you're looking for a job opportunity.
Well, what I see happening is if it becomes like, like, what is it, 4chan or 8chan or whatever, like anything goes. If that's what he's wanting to do with the free speech on Twitter, I just see a lot of people just leaving the platform altogether. I've actually left the platform. I haven't been on it for 4 or 5 years, but so whatever they do, I could care less. But at the same time, it's like,
well, and that's me. I'm just like, hey, I'm like, burn Twitter to the ground. Now that you own it, just tear it down and be done with it. Throw it away. Same with Facebook. Same with all that shit. Like I think it's doing more harm than good, most of it. So
yeah, I don't have
just going away.
The only thing I do these days is Instagram, and I don't even keep the app on my phone because I don't want to be tempted to just scroll all day. So anytime I post something, I literally download the app, post, delete the app, just because. And then I can still, like, if I need to get in touch with, like a DJ in Phoenix, or, someone I've met through the socials or whatever, I can log on to the website on my computer, send a DM, and still have that access, but not necessarily be sitting there and scrolling and just in that. The problem I have these days is YouTube. YouTube is kicking my ass, man. Like, it's like, because I use it a lot. Like I for studying for like this DevOps role and learning how to do GitHub Actions and learning how to do all this stuff, I'll go through tutorials and I'll work along with it. But I'll see this like post about, here's how you make a Damascus knife, and I'll sit there for 8 minutes watching a video on how to make a Damascus knife for no reason, and just waste. It's like, I wish. So, couple gripes with YouTube. Why in the hell do I have to hit a button every time I've watched a video saying I don't want to see the damn video again? Like, their algorithm or whatever is set up to it just shows the same 100 videos over and over again. And you would think with something like YouTube, where they're literally millions of minutes of content put up every day, why am I being fed the same bullshit over and over and over again? And it's a 2-step process. So like, if you don't want to see the same video again, you have to hit not interested or whatever. And then you have to say why, because I've seen the video. And it's like, you should have a switch in your settings. Don't show me shit I've already seen. And that would solve a bunch of stuff.
Well, especially if you're trying to learn, right? Because there is a lot of like riffraff out there. I mean, I use YouTube a lot in the same way, which is to try and, figure out how to do something, especially like I've been learning Premiere a little bit lately. And so it's like, how do I make X, Y, and Z happen in Adobe Premiere, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of just kind of nonsense on there too. There's a lot of people that post videos that say they're what you're looking for, but they're not. And, they just kind of lean in on whatever's popular, keyword or something. And, so you end up kind of sorting through stuff. So so if you decide you don't want to see it, like, you shouldn't be shown it again.
Well, and like, what's his name? Mr. Beast or whatever. He's some like YouTube celebrity, but he's everywhere. And I have to block his content. And then I have to block anything related to Minecraft, because I'm not a 12-year-old kid playing Minecraft. And it's like, you would think they would have a better way. And it's just so frustrating to, because I use it legitimately.
If you're logged in with the Eggs account, you're probably getting Minecraft because of my kid. Because he watches all that dumb stuff. And Mr. Beast, actually, I've kind of turned my leaf on him. I don't watch a lot of his content or anything, but I heard him. He was on Joe Rogan's show, and I just kind of listened to what he does. And the kid gives away just millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like, he gives away almost everything he makes, and just like, it's ridiculous amounts of money. And
so it's
super philanthropic. It's pretty interesting.
That, great. Yeah. He's, it's awesome that he's donating all his money and all that stuff. And he's got gobs of money to donate, but the shock and awe value of creating content, he's literally like, I'm going to give this kid $1 million on the street because I want the clicks on my YouTube video. And that to me is bullshit. Like,
and that's been his whole thing, right? I don't know all this stuff very well, but I know, like, I saw one that was like, I'm spending $1 million on fireworks. Right. And so then he did this big, fireworks thing, and it was like $1 million worth of fireworks, or $1 million firework or something.
Yeah.
And so that was the hype, right? That drove it in. And that $1 million that he spent made him 10 million. Yeah. Right. And so in clicks and ad revenue and stuff like that. And so it's an interesting model, because, I've seen other guys that do this with supercars, which I think is probably a smarter model, or one that I'm interested in.
Well, you look at like,
they buy a, $250,000 Lamborghini, and then they do a bunch of content with it. Then people watch it, then they make more money, then they buy the next car.
Yeah.
And, that kind of thing. And so they're just basically using, big money to draw a crowd, and then that draws more money. So then they can, kind of become fulfilling.
Well, and that to me, you want to create content, create something that's useful, like do something like what we're doing, like trying to help people, other than like today, we're just griping about shit. But like,
that's good sometimes too, though.
You know what I mean? Like, it just, that type of show, that type of like, we're going to go and do shock and awe stuff just to try and create content the kids are going to watch, or the Minecraft or this or that. Like, I don't need any of that in my life. I'm literally just using it to try and learn stuff. And the fact that I have to filter through all that shit is just so annoying. So
yeah, they should have like an education setting or something for people who are just spending all their time watching educational stuff or trying to learn skills.
Yeah.
So because I mean, you know, my kids obviously watch a ton of YouTube, but they watch it for like entertainment value, right? I mean, like we would watch, you know, whatever on TV, you know, Dukes of Hazzard, and they're watching Mr. Beast instead.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's just their TV show. You know,
it just drives me nuts that that's like the thing, you know.
Oh, like, God. And I'll tell you what, I mean, you know, again, not a ton of exposure to Mr. Beast, but I will tell you that I would 10 times rather have my kids watch Mr. Beast than half the crap they're watching.
Yeah.
Like Lucas's favorite is this guy named Corey Kenshin, and all he does is play video games or something on TV. Yeah. He's got like a gaming headset, and it's got like a microphone in front of his face, and he just yells into it all day. Like it just clips, and the mic is all distorted and horrible, and he just yells into it while he plays games. And it's like, I can't watch 5 minutes of him. But I mean, the guy has millions of subscribers. I mean, lots of kids, probably Lucas's age, sit and watch him. And, you know, I mean, it's not for me, but, you know, I guess different strokes.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's just, it's a double-edged sword, you know. I mean, like, because the ability to create content and teach stuff is literally how I'm learning how to do all this stuff, is like, because people will sit down and, oh, you need to learn how to deploy to a server. This is how you do it. Great. Thank you so much. That's awesome. But then they also have the, you know, I hate to say it, but even like what is it? The diesel guy in Utah. That's
the Diesel Brothers guy.
Like that type of shit even bothers me. It's like, it's shock and awe. Like, hey, I bought this entire scrapyard of crap. Let's go through it. You know, it's like, come on. You know, like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing, you know, and that's the unfortunate thing is that the salacious stuff sells, right? I mean, that's what people watch. And, you know, I think that, it's challenging because, I mean, obviously there's this like money factor where it's like, you know, you have to have money to make money. And so it sort of eliminates a lot of people. But then you have the, you know, other folks that, you know, scrap it out and make it from nothing. And so I think it's good, but I'm with you on all those negatives. I also wonder, and I don't know if you're a couple of years younger than me, but I don't know if you're creeping up on the get off my yard era.
Oh, I'm on the get off my yard era. I've been on that since I was 20.
Yeah. I've noticed in the last little bit, like I'm shitting on Ethan's music, my oldest son's music, and I'm everybody, you know, get off my yard. Like I'm going full get off my yard.
I had so the other day I'm playing, it's a slow night. It's like a Thursday night, and there's maybe 20, maybe 30 people in the venue. It was like, just, I'll play whatever. I'll play, like, I was playing house music. I was playing like Blink 182 and Newfound Glory. I was all over the place, right? And this kid comes in and he's like, am I playing some hip hop? I'm like, okay, you know, no big deal. And so I was blatantly not playing hip hop. So I was like, whatever, I can do like a half-hour set of hip hop. So I get out of, like, I had this segue that I was going from alternative, it's like Paper Planes. That's a good kind of like in between from like an alternative track to kind of, it's got more of a hip hop beat, but it's still kind of alternative. So it's a good like transition into that. And then I came in and I played like a 2000s track, like 2005, 2006. So it was an older track. I can't remember what it was, but he comes back to me and he's like, dude, I asked for hip hop, not my dad's hip hop. Can you play some Tekashi 6, like one of these new hip hop rappers, like Little something, you know? And I'm like, right. That was my get off my lawn moment. I just was like, whatever, dude. And I just closed the door. You know, it's just like,
get off my yard, get off my bar.
It's like, you know, I'll play hip hop, but I'm not going to play shit hop. So go away.
Well, and honestly, like so much of that, unless you go like a full, like, you know, into sort of modern hip hop, and I'm sure there's variation. I'm not very schooled on modern hip hop really either, but I mean, I hear a lot of it because of Ethan. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's kind of a dark vibe, right? I mean, it's not a fun, I'm out drinking with my friends kind of vibe. A lot of it's pretty dark. And like, I mean, just like the beats are kind of low and mellow, and like the way a lot of the rapping is done is kind of low, and they don't, you know, a little monosyllabic. They don't go up and down a lot and stuff. So, I mean, even if you did start mixing in some of that stuff, like it's going to be a bar killer.
Well, and it's all auto-tuned and it's just garbage. It's like there's zero talent. And even like I've gotten a lot of requests for like Excision and like the trap and yeah, that's cool music to listen to in your car or at the show. Yeah. But like in a bar with like 18-year-olds and 50-year-olds, that melodic trap or that kind of like that style just doesn't work.
Yeah, and so that's the thing that kid like that I'm sure isn't thinking of. They're just going, oh man, I love 6ix9ine. Man, you dropped that new 6ix9ine track. But like, I mean, I don't know, 6ix9ine's like screaming at the top of his lungs over every song. It's like, I mean, this is not. I mean, who can dance to that or who can vibe to that or whatever. Well, it can be cool, but it's just not.
What I've seen that's been kind of cool lately though is like there's a lot of so like there's Lado, Big Energy is a Fantasy by Mariah Carey. It's like a new, it uses the same beats, but they're, so it's like the same. There's that one. There's a new Return of the Mac one. There's like they're like recycling all the old beats from like, we were. And so it's kind of cool to be able to like, there's a new, Vibrant Thing by Q-Tip.
Yeah.
There's a new song called Poke It Out that uses the same beat. So I'll come out of Vibrant Thing into Poke It Out or vice versa and like expose the newer generation to the old song and then come into the new song. So they kind of like get both. And so that's kind of cool. But, a lot of the new is just the 6ix9ines or the Littles or it's not my style. And so I am definitely
and that can be okay too, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be your style. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just because some kid wants to hear it, I mean, if you heard half the crap that Ethan has, I mean, he would come up to you and be like, hey man, can you play a little Darky or can you play, any of these bands that he likes? And you would be like, oh my God, no, like I can't play that here.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's no place for it. And there's a time and a place for everything. You go to a seedy hip hop club where they're playing dank music like that. And the room is just kind of dark and everyone's kind of, I don't know, sweaty and grinding, then fine. That's a great place for that kind of music. But I mean, a lot of it, I mean, at least a lot of what Ethan's listening to is sort of this hybrid. I mean, it's almost like the old, I mean, it's less guitar driven, but I mean, it's more like, screaming over a beat. It's more like, emo music or something, you know? And so it's even kind of evolving out of, cause we went through kind of a mumble rap thing and that's when you had all your Lils and all your ASAPs and all these guys. And now we're sort of evolving out of that to more, some of it's a little more melodic, kind of the songs you were just mentioning that are using older beats and stuff, and I think that, I don't know, maybe it's going in a better direction, but as far as
I sure hope so.
It's hard to play any of that stuff. So,
well, and speaking of the get off my lawn kind of mentality of this, like the show I did last week that I did audio for, I dropped the speakers off and left because I didn't want to sit through the set. Normally I'd be like, yeah, I'll sit here and enjoy it, but like this was like a Christian metal band and Christian just ruins it for me, so I couldn't do it.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I've never understood it, but there are more like Christian metal bands than you can shake a stick at, and I've never understood how the genres work together because it seems so counterintuitive.
Have you seen the South Park episode where Carton starts a Christian like band just to get to platinum or like sell 1 million albums or whatever?
Yeah, I think it was like when Creed was hot or something.
Yeah. I think it's
no, but I mean it's true, but there's a ton of that stuff and it's pretty wild. I was trying to actually explaining it to Ethan the other day because I played you had texted me a clip or something from the show and I played it for Ethan and I was like, oh, we should have gone up to the show, because like I like some metal and all that. But I was telling him it's Christian metal band. He's like, that's weird. Like, how does all that work? Like, and I was like, well, it's just noisy and loud. I mean, the message can be whatever you want. I mean,
supposedly, like, I don't know much about all the back end stuff, but supposedly it's like even gang affiliated and stuff too.
Oh, wow.
So like they're clicked up and it's like, okay, all right.
Pretty hardcore Christian, man.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny. Well, no, I was telling him because I always, try and play some interesting things for the boys. And one of my favorite metal concepts of all time was this band called K9s. And K9s is death metal, but it's sung by a dog. So they have their dog on mic and he's just like barking into the mic. They've got like this, they have a good metal band, but they have the dog barking out, lyrics during it. And there's another one that, what's it called? Necrogoblicon or something like that. And I think that's what it is Necrogoblicon. And their singer's name is John Goblicon. And he is a goblin. And so day in, day out, dude's wearing a costume. Or he's a real goblin, one or the other. But every time I see him, he's in the goblin suit. But God, he had to deal with like Chili's. He's got a book out, like being John Goblicon, like all that stuff. Like, there's a whole life around John Goblicon, and it's pretty hilarious. But yeah, so I mean, you can be innovative in metal too. But it's funny how many Christian metal bands.
Yeah. All righty. Well, I think that's.
Yeah, we probably ought to call it a wrap. I don't exactly know how long we've been going. I forgot to check a start time and I didn't set a clock. So we're just going. So anyway, well, cool, brother. Well, good catching up. And thanks to everybody who tunes in the show this week and every week. And see y'all next time.